Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our PAASE Fireside Chats episode 17, Bridging Journalists and Scientists During COVID. And I'd like to say that, the inspiration for this in PAASE is from a meeting that PAASE had with Dr. Mahang Ahas in SWS sometime in 2019, I believe, where he showed us some data relating to science. And one of the remarkable findings that he had was that science in general was not really appreciated by the Filipino people. And so we've been wanting to find ways to try to get science to the general public, including our decision makers in government, as well as the rest of Philippine society. Some of you might know PASE is a worldwide organization. So it's an academy of about 450 PhD level scientists and engineers based in the Philippines, in the United States, and other countries. And these are professionals and academics who are of Philippine descent. And our major aim would be to try to help, improve science and engineering technology in the country. And one of our taglines is Agham at Kaalaman para sa Bayan and outreach to Philippine regions. Okay, and at this point, we would like to, I have to admit our people here. Okay? So today we have very special guests, and we're reaching out to people who can communicate with the rest of Philippine society. Even as we're trying to find ways to have our scientists become guests, say in talk shows or to have videos that could be viewed by many more people. And this is something that we have shared as a project with PE Ernie Pernia, and we're still working on it. But today, as a start, we thought we would get our journalists and writers to join us in a informal conversation. And at this point, before I turn over the floor to my co-host, Dr. Sarah Daway Ducanes, who will introduce our guests, I'd just like to show you the discussion guide. It's general, and we would like your views, our speakers' views on science and technology, human capital development, and STEM education, communicating scientific findings and their applications and impact to government leaders and the general public, important S&T topics during COVID, and finally, how journalists and scientists can work together to drum up the science beat. So, as I was telling our speakers before we started, you can talk on any of these items directly or tangentially. You can talk about anything you want that relates to science communication. So at this point, I'd like to turn over the floor to Dr. Sarah Daway Ducanes of the UP Diliman School of Economics. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gisela. Good afternoon to everyone. So this afternoon, we're in for a really good treat. No? And we have a very distinguished panel of speakers. So first is Dr. Mahar Mangahas, who is a columnist in the Philippine Daily Inquirer, and his column is titled Social Climate. He's also the president and CEO, also founder of the Social Weather Stations, or SWS, and he's an academician of the National Academy of Science and Technology. Our second speaker is Dr. Vicente Vic Paqueo, who is a distinguished visiting fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS. He is also a fellow of the Social Weather Stations, or SWS. He is a former lead economist, World Bank at Washington, D.C. And he's also a lead consultant for the Social Protection Support Project of the Asian Development Bank, or ADB. Our third speaker is Dr. Raul Cabella, who is, as we all know, is also a columnist in Business World, and his column is titled Introspective. He is also national scientist of the National Academy of Science and Technology, or NAST. He is a professor emeritus at the UP School of Economics and an honorary professor at the Asian Institute of Management, or AIM. And last but not the least is Mr. Bu Chanko, who is a well-known columnist at the Philippine Star, and his column is titled Demand and Supply. We'd like to thank our panelists for joining us this afternoon. So what will happen is that each of you will be given about 12 to 15 minutes to give your spiel. Then afterwards, we open the floor to questions. So we'll start with Dr. Manahas.
All right. This one. This one. Share. Okay. 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 You see that now, Sarah? Can everybody see that now? Can you hear me?
And hear you clearly.
All right. Fine. All right. So that's just our title slide. And what I want to do is to kind of explain what we're up to at SWS. This, of course, that's the title of my column. Last other day, it was schooling in COVID-19 time. And I've just made a list here of a selection here of the pieces I've done in this last year. All of them are about the impact of COVID. It's a very serious impact, as you can see, starting from the problem without transportation, the hunger, the fear, the caution, meaning people are actually observing the health protocols, the dependency of the government, that's the ayuda, resiliency, strandedness, hunger. The indicators are really extremely bad. That's why we've started a new adjective calling them catastrophic. We've never had such terrible numbers before. Jobs destroyed, and so forth. Hunger, suffering, a very bad Christmas. Now, these are our own statistics, right? I'd like to emphasize that these are not taken by the government. This is our own work, which we have been doing for a long time. And of course, I appreciate very much having a column in order to speak about them, but we're not dependent only on the column. We have an agenda. This is a permanent agenda, right? It's seen in our name. No? Our name is social weather, the social weather stations. But it's not about the atmosphere. It's not about meteorological weather. It's about the people. And what about the people? It's about well-being in particular. In particular, you have to understand it and what's determining it. But first, you have to measure it and report it regularly. That's why we're using the term stations, weather stations. What do you expect with weather stations? You expect regular reporting. You expect it to be frequent, open, and reliable. Right? So it's not a one-shot thing. It's over and over and over again. And well, we have at least a quarterly, plus other special surveys too. But we've been doing this. We started doing this in 1986 on our own. We had prequels. But since 1992, it's been quarterly. Now, it doesn't mean we'll have only a quarterly report because every survey has so many topics and we can't put them all at the same time. It's actually, we do need 3 months to publish everything. But where did this come from? This came from a very comprehensive look at what is development. Development is not gross national product, by the way. All right, it's other things, more important things. And we see ourselves as an alternative statistical provider. We see ourselves as getting the statistics on what matters, but which is not being measured because it's not on the government's agenda. So our our my say philosophy is, if we can do it, why don't we do it? Why don't we put it out and let people see what the situation is? But this was the very beginning. 1976, we already had a general idea about what we wanted it to be. It's a 10-chapter report. Chapter number 1 is an overview. I wrote that. Yes, I summarized. Chapter number 2 about health. That's by Vic Pacayo himself. He's an original member of this team. Chapter 3 on learning is by the late Ruping Alonso, who's was an original here and joined SWS later on. Indicators of well-being was done by Nilin Santa Romana, the twin brother of our ambassador to China. Number 5 on poverty is by Tete Sabrera, and that's where the original self-rated poverty got started. The physical environment, those indicators were originally done by Philip Medalla, who's now in the central bank, NEDA, like that. Sub-public safety and justice, that was done by Eleanor Elekin, the late Eleanor Elekin, UP Department of Education. Political opportunity, political welfare is by the late Elsa Jurado. And social mobility is by Jennifer Lobby, an American who's now back in the US, former Filipino resident. And the last one, a pilot survey, is our trial. You know, when we developed these indicators, a lot of them didn't exist, you see. And so we did a pilot survey in Batangas province in 1974, I believe, in order to test them. So we have the principles behind us already. So we have a big agenda. The agenda is well-being as a whole, and I say it in particular so that we are very clear that we're not talking about politics. All right, we're talking about the people's well-being. But it so happens that to get this data, it's very important to use the social survey. The social survey, the scientific ones, of course, because there are non-scientific ones all the time. All right, you have to know how to identify them and distinguish them. The scientific social survey is the most basic source of data for any kind of social science research. This is mass communication. It's the listening side of mass communication. Most people think mass comm is broadcasting and writing and telling people what you want to say to them. But the other side, the neglected side, is listening to the people. You see? So there are only a few schools actually abroad that offer public opinion polling. That's in communications department. How do you listen to the people? What are the people telling you? Right? Important to know that the people deserve to know their own opinion collectively. People don't know their opinions except their personal opinions and their close associates, their family, their friends. But they don't know the opinions of people in Mindanao, where if you're in Manila. You don't know the opinions of the poor people if you're a middle class or a college graduate. The only way you can really know what are other people's views is to have a survey about them. I wouldn't know what these are if we didn't have the surveys about them. So essentially, this is a democratic activity. This is a democratic activity. Of course, these are very much used for determining how people are going to vote. But that is not their principal use. All right? It is to determine, for us, it's to determine how people are. Kumusta? Kumusta ang mga tao? And of course, now that we are in this COVID-19, that's extremely important because ang sama-sama ng sitwasyon ngayon. Some more bits to know about SWS. Our surveys are non-proprietary. Nobody owns them. All right. Well, we do. All right. So it's up to us to use them and disclose them. But we have made sure from the very beginning that everything is archived from the very, very beginning. And this is to tell you how big it is. 656 data sets. That's essentially 656 operations going into the field. 313 of these are national surveys. They're all statistically representative of whatever they were. All right. No special, convenience surveys here. They're meant to be like that. Right? 1 million interviews have been conducted over the years. We're 36 years old almost. 120,000 question items have been asked. And this is how you search for the data. You search by the question. It's not one survey operation, one piece of data, because a survey, it might have 100 questions, 200 questions. There are so many subject matters in there. And to search, you search by question. Now, a very important thing also is that we are linked with other countries. We join them in doing exactly the same surveys. And this is extremely important. In fact, this is where the data that I showed Giselle from the beginning came from. How do we know that Filipinos do not appreciate science too much? We know because we can compare ourselves with the Americans, the Japanese, the Russians, etc., 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 and we fare very poorly. We wouldn't have known that if it weren't for the ISSP and these other kinds of surveys. Of course, we publish. Just to let you know what we do. We have this particular book on the elections. That's useful, but we're not going to do that too much. Data are there, can be looked up again. And I want to point out the survey on the impact of Yolanda on Filipino households, because there's no other Philippine data about what the effect of Yolanda was. See, we were in the field, we were in the field 4 times a year. So we were in the field very soon after Yolanda, and we're always measuring poverty 4 times a year. So we were able to separate the Yolanda victims and the non-Yolanda victims, and the poverty of victims and the poverty of non-victims. And so we quite easily were able to figure out that Yolanda's impact was a 3-point impact in increasing poverty at that particular time. See? Now that's something that you cannot get from official data, because official data are not, are not really, not really clearly meant to measure people's well-being. It's too much GNP, GNP, GNP. Right? In effect, there is a revolt against GNP all over the world, and the practical impact of that is to do things like this, and to do them frequently. And where do you get them? Well, we've found that the simple way to do it is just to have a release on the media, a media release on our website. This is our website. We have approximately 1 release per week, I would say, sometimes 2. We easily have 52 media releases per year. And well, they're all archived. As you could see over there, says view the archive. And that is how we disseminate these things rapidly to the general public. Oh, by the way, on the left, That's our award. We got the award for the betterment of the human condition. That's what it's known as, from the International Society for Quality of Life Studies. This is the top institutional award for the kind of work that we do. The world's top institutional award. This award has been given to the Gallup World Poll. It's also been given to the World Happiness Report, for example, which came out again last week, the new World Happiness Report. These are the institutions, we count ourselves among them, that are regularly following up what's happening to people's well-being. Of course, in our own way. There's no one way to do it, and we're doing it in our own way. And we're doing a lot of it through self-assessment, by the way. Self-assessment is a very, very convenient way of finding out the social weather. It's not measured in terms of money. It's measured in terms of what people feel. And the World Happiness Report is full of self-assessments everywhere, right? In fact, I'd say self-assessment is more reliable than even judgments. There are a lot of judgment calls, in indicators. The corruption indicator, the Transparency International's corruption indicator, that's a judgment call by a few hundred judges all over the world. Right? That's another way of doing statistics. You lose out if you're using financial statistics. This in effect is a movement. It's called the social indicators movement, to use more meaningful statistics that are easy to understand and to come out there, and scientific, mind you, scientific. We don't do this because they're going to be news. We're not choosing them because, like, we're editors to choose what's newsworthy. No, we're choosing them because we just believe in the subject matter, and we'll just keep on doing it, right? As time goes by. There, of course, there are other things too. Like, if you see this top news release there, it's the danger of publishing things critical of the administration. So all of these things are there, and they're for everybody to see and for everybody to know. Right? And we'll keep on doing it, and we're glad for the media that media republishes, reports what it is that we do. But I must say that media do not hardly sponsor surveys, unlike in other countries where media is one of the prime sponsors of polls to see what's going on. Here, this is not the case. Here the media have money for other things, maybe, but they don't have money for these surveys, and somebody has to do it. Well, we can afford it by doing other kinds of work, which is revenue generating. Actually, a lot of it has to do with finding out the survey data that is needed in public projects. We're very proud that we were the ones who surveyed the recipients of the cash transfer program. That sort of proves that the cash transfer program works. That's a very, very big survey, and of course we earned money from that. But we plow it back to these other things which don't have sponsors, all right? So if you're wondering how can we afford it, we afford it by doing those other things for which we receive revenues, and then we plow it back into things like this. And none of it is fake, all right? It's the real thing. It's the real thing. It's science, it's private. Okay. Non-part. Well, that ends my my presentation. Shall I stop the share now?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Yes, please.
There you go.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manajas, for sharing with us the efforts of SWS to continuously provide us with frequent, open, and reliable measures of well-being. Now, to bridge the gap between scientists and journalists and the general public, well, we need surveys done scientifically, such as what the SWS does, to get a more accurate sense of what the people's conditions and opinions are. And these are free of any political agendas. So, well, I like what you said earlier about the survey, the conducting of surveys. It's like a democratic activity where we're getting the pulse of public opinion. Congratulations to the SWS for receiving the 2019 IS Qualls Award for the betterment of the human condition. So, should you have any questions, you may post your questions on the chat box below, or you may air them already later when we open the floor for the question and answer portion. But for now, we'll go on to Dr. Vic Aqueo. Sir, the floor is yours.
Sarah. Hello. Hello.
We can hear you, Dr. Paqueo. It's
Can,
good.
can can you
Yeah.
put up can you kindly put up the my PPT that I sent earlier?
While we're waiting for, here we go.
Okay, thank you. So I think my objectives this afternoon is to share um, some information about research that I'm currently doing with Dr. Babes Orbeta. Um, I'm uh, looking at this issue of public-private complementarity in education. But so in the process, we had to look at the analyze the um, program for international student assessment um, that came out or that was done uh, in 2018. So anyway, uh, I'm just kind of share with you some of our exploratory explorations on the exploratory analysis, as well as our the thoughts that are guiding us in terms of what kinds of question to look at. So essentially, it's I would like to highlight the urgent need to explore, develop, implement, and strengthen and expand promising alternatives to conventional mainstream approaches to improving Philippine national education system. Um, More boldly, to challenge conventional views dominating education policy and reform choices. Um, and in particular uh, to get more media and education stakeholders' interest in alternative views that challenge failed conventional solutions to uh, Philippine long-standing education problems. Here, I am inspired with that phrase that coined by Cynthia Bautista and Dina Ocampo in their study entitled Reforms That Do Not Transform. Um, so let me start with the context. So um, and talk about very quickly about the fourth industrial revolution, its salient features and consequences, particularly for human capital development. Salient features are as follows: accelerating advances in scientific knowledge and technology, constant waves of upcoming waves of disruptive innovations, products, production, and distribution processes and business models, unprecedented opportunities for wealth creation, and poverty reduction and other social issues. And very importantly, labor saving productivity growth due to AI driven automation. There are intended and unintended consequences of the fourth industrial revolution and its waves of innovation that's upcoming. Accelerated obsolescence of technology and skills, destruction and configuration of old jobs, creation of new jobs, and reconfiguration of jobs requiring new or upgraded competencies, much more frequent job hopping, necessitating work flexibility, trainability, and access to quality lifelong learning programs. Risk of structural unemployment and leaving the poor and disadvantaged further behind due to lack of access to quality fundamental education and technical training. And finally, risk of social instability due to possible displacements, greater and worsening inequality, and structural unemployment as a result of the fourth industrial revolution, if the issues are not appropriately addressed. Okay, so essentially, what we're thinking about are sort of to think of a few promising solutions that would move us towards the Philippines to having a national education system that is more responsive to science and technology advances and market changes. So we would like to highlight the need to explore alternatives to develop a more adaptive and efficient education system able to respond to the challenges of the fourth industrial revolution. Um, and particularly, we would like to explore promising alternatives like increased mobilization of private education sector and the use of vouchers where the government will enable students to make choices of schools um, that is of according to the quality standards that parents are interested in. And then maybe I'll just mention this if we have no more time about the MOOCs, massive open online courses, and its usefulness, and other online courses and blended education programs, and focusing on the idea that there are complementary enabling regulatory environments for the Philippines to establish, to be able to take advantage of this technology-based education delivery system. So let me now present um, an overview in facts and figures. Essentially, the facts and figures that I'm going to present um, is intended to for us to recognize the need to catch up with peers and aspirational countries, one, and then two, um, discuss or um, um, lay out the potential of private education and vouchers. So figure 1A essentially presents the PISA 2018 data on student test scores in mathematics, trying to lay out this test scores against the GDP, real GDP per capita, in order to try to control for differences in income and to make the comparisons kind of more meaningful. So what you have here is essentially showing that a the Philippines, as I think a lot of you know, is either kulelat or second to kulelat in this set of countries that were being surveyed. But even more kind of disconcerting is that the Philippines is actually falling below that line, which means that it could actually uh, reach a higher level if for its given level of income. But the other thing to notice is that the students um, of private schools actually is a little above that line. So it's performing better than the students, the average students in public schools. Next, please. Okay, this one is the test scores in science. It's the same story. Next, please. This figure 1C presents the student test score in reading. It's also the same story. So whether it is in science or reading / literature, it's the findings are the same. Next, please. So this just summarizes the a comparison of test scores in science, math, and reading between public and private school students, and they are significantly different. And the percentage difference between public and private students' performance is about, on average, about ranges from about 13 to close to 18%. Next, please. Okay, so our research has to do with the following question. Why are private school students performing better on average than public school students? Now, part of the answer is that there is self-selection. Private school students come from families that are better off, who can afford private schools. Um, I will show that in the next slide, the evidence for that. Um, but I don't think that that is all there is to it. Uh, previous bank study um, using so-called propensity score matching uh, analysis finds that private students continue to perform better even after controlling for family socioeconomic background variables. Um, our working hypothesis then is that private schools have on average better learning environment that better off families are able and willing to buy for their children. Moreover, private schools, we hypothesize, have more flexibility and stronger incentives to be more effective and efficient in producing and delivering education. Uh, After all, their survival depends on being effective and efficient. Next, please. Okay, so let me go into a little bit more detail. So I will present just a simple comparison of means between public and private schools, nothing fancy, um, of the characteristics at the school levels and the student levels. So family background, uh, on the last column will be the percentage difference. So private minus public, and what percentage, what's the percentage difference? And because some of those indicators are actually composite indicators consisting of various response items, and they are been kind of uh, aggregated in a particular way. I put in the int interpretation. If it is plus, that means it's favorable, okay, to private schooling. Um, so here, essentially, we see that family assets, ICT, resources, mother's education, uh, cultural possessions, etc. These family background variables that are related to resources and income uh, are favorable for students who go to private schools. Uh, Also, by the way, included in this family background variable, very interesting to see that parents' emotional support perceived by students, that it is there's a big difference in the perception of students regarding parents' emotional support for them. Those that are uh, enrolled in the private schools have or felt much greater parental support. And we know Dr. Beta, just using also PISA data, has shown that that is correlated, are things constant, with learning achievement test scores. So the greater support, parental support, the higher the performance in the test of students. Next, please. Okay, so this table presents the characteristics of public and private schools. So this will be school level variables. So class size, which is often the thing that uh, 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 reformers focus on, um, the class size of public schools are higher uh, than that of the private schools. So the advantage, this gives advantage to favorable advantage to private schools. They have 14, about 15% lower class size. Um, but the interesting thing here is that the student teacher ratio is not significantly different between public and private schools, which means that the public schools, or putting it more positively, private schools tend to be more efficient in the use of resources, in the sense of using it directly for the for in, uh, facilitating learning achievement in the classroom of students. Um, and maybe what's happening here is that in public schools, there are many more teachers that are being used for administrative uh, purposes. Okay, so the other thing to note here is that the index, the proportion of all uh, teachers fully certified is actually better uh, for the public schools than private schools. So that should be a big plus for them. But then we know that uh, maybe they have more certified teachers as a proportion of the teaching staff. But then again, maybe they are not well motivated to teach well. We don't know that yet, but that's a suspicion. Um, then we have student behavior hindering learning and teacher behavior hindering learning. There's no significant difference between public and private. Next, please. Okay. Now, here, there are in the first few indicators, we find that there are shortages. These are about shortages of educational material, educational staff. Uh, 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 what you find is that the private schools report less uh, shortages than public schools. Okay, by a hefty difference. And then you have this schools instruction hindered by lack of physical infrastructure. Same thing. Uh, Advantage the private schools they have less shortages. School instruction hindered by poor physical infrastructure, and then number of available computers per student in grade 10, also big difference, more available computers in private schools, proportion of available computers that are connected to the internet, uh, favorable to uh, more for private schools. And then an index, because there are several response items here. We use Proctor analysis to construct an index on quality assurance at school. So they have various schemes that measures quality assurance. And what you'll find is that there is a big gap between public and private schools in terms of quality assurance practices in school. Um, Okay, next, please. Then we look at the characteristics of public and private schools according to the perception of students or assessments of the students. So the ones that have pluses basically are showing that those are the private schools have advantages over public schools. So like teachers' stimulation of reading, the teachers actually appears be um, to be more into helping stimulate reading. Then perceive teachers' interest, disciplinary climate, and so on. So all those indicators of quality are marked plus in the last column. The other interesting thing to observe is their perception, the students' perception of competitiveness at school. So private schools, the students feel more the competition among students to excel. Disciplinary climate is also better in public school and private schools. Okay, next, please. Okay, so this continues the perception of students regarding the characteristics of their schools. One thing that is attitude towards school, sort of learning activities. So that's a big difference. I'm sorry, that's not significant, but where you have the subjective well-being, sense of belonging to school, is not also significant. But what is significant here, worth noting, is bullying. Dr. Beta found significant relationship between learning achievement scores and bullying, the frequency of bullying. And here we find that public schools, the prevalence of bullying is much more in public schools than in private schools by as much as 25%. The other thing, resilience. So students in private schools are much more resilient. They are by resilience, essentially is kung ano, nahirapan ka, lalaban ka, bagsak ka, mag-aral ka, that's the kind. And that's in the literature, resilience has been found to be the social-emotional skills that has been correlated with success in later life. Another big item difference is this work mastery. Okay, so this huge difference in favor of private schools students. So there is that ethos to master, what you're supposed to learn. There are other things that are interesting. Metacognition, that's understanding and remembering. Advantage, private schools. Summarizing, advantage, private schools. Less repetition also in public schools, private schools, sorry, private schools. Okay, next please. So that gives you a comparative sort of feel between the various dimensions of quality. By the way, I make a distinction between outcomes and quality. Quality are like inputs, the quality of inputs, sufficiency of inputs, etc. While outcomes would I would refer to uh, test scores, learning achievements, etc. So why PH should use private sector more or better in improving access to quality education? One, more effective in delivering improved education uh, um, uh, than compared to public schools. And, it's like this has been shown to be the case in various developing countries. Um, it's not always the case, but there is a tendency that they are more cost effective. We did this study before in the Philippines with Manny Jimenez, uh, and several uh, uh, studies also similar to what we did in the Philippines with Manny, like in Thailand, in Colombia, in Dominican Republic, we get the same results. A recent DFID uh, review of the literature also shows that private school vouchers students tend to perform better. Second point is that use more and better use of private schools. Why? Because they can impart greater flexibility, adaptability, and innovativeness, and stronger performance, incentives to the national education system. Right now, the national education system in the Philippines consists really of two components, the private sector and the public sector. But government is so focused on the development of the public school system and has, to be kind, unintentionally undermined. I would even use the word marginalize over the years, over decades, the private school system. In, and implying, therefore, that we are not taking advantage of an asset, which is the private school system, to advance national goals in education. Uh, so it's important to be cost effective and to take advantage of the comparative strength of the private sector, especially in the aftermath of COVID pandemic. Because government is and will be facing tighter budget constraint moving forward. Now, one is to be cautioned, however. Greater efficiency should not be seen as a substitute, as should not be seen as a substitute for the need of government to invest more in education to be able to take advantage of the fourth industrial revolution opportunities. Now, unfortunately, past history of government budget allocation for education is not reassuring. And therefore, I think that there is a need to intensify education advocacy. Next, please. Okay. This slide shows you what I mean, but we are underinvesting. If you compare to other countries, including those that are our aspirational peers and regional neighbors, you'll find that in the past we have really been government has been spending less on education relative to GDP. And there's a point just before Pinoy's time that we went down to like 2.6, while others were already at 4, 5. They were trying to hit, like Indonesia, aiming for 5%. During the time of Pinoy, it increased to 3.5, and their ambition was to raise it to 5%, but after he's gone, I think it has kind of not it has stopped rising in terms as a proportion of GDP. Next, please. So let me just with these two slides kind of round out my discussion by representing a couple of promising concrete policy actions and transformative research and development that would be desirable to do, in my view. One, to do an impact evaluation of the senior high school voucher program. That's a program that provides education subsidy that enables students to go to private schools of their choice. Second, based on the assessment study, strengthen, when I say the assessment study, it's the study that we actually did as part of the technical assistance of ADB for DepEd, looking at the, not the impact, but just the implementation, the conceptualization, the institutional kind of processes of that vouchers program for senior high school. And the conclusion, our conclusion is that general in general, the program is well conceptualized, designed, and well implemented. But there are improvements that could be done to make it even much better. So this is not an impact evaluation, it's a process evaluation. Third, expansion. So we are advocating expansion of application of the vouchers idea to junior high school. That's the grade 7 to 10. Fourth, R&D. It should be R&D to effectively, more R&D to effectively harness the MOOCs or what's the MOOCs again? The massive online, massive open online courses, it's MOOCs, and other online programs to take advantage of its low cost way of delivering education and knowledge, especially in the context where we don't have a lot of top professors, for example, in the science and mathematics fields and other S&T courses. This could be used maybe in a blended fashion, but there are complementary measures that need to be taken, especially they need to establish enabling regulatory reforms, okay, to ensure quality. And Indonesia, Malaysia, and I think Vietnam, they are actually developing a quality assurance system based on markets and certification system that I think would do as well if we learn from them how they are doing it and why they're doing it. The distance learning, sometimes we think of it as very is cheap and can be done easily. But I think that with the COVID, when they were going to this virtual learning or online learning, we find that a lot of parents and students actually found it difficult, and then teachers also were not ready to teach effectively online courses. So I think we need to get prepared to be able to take advantage fruitfully of this new technology. Then the research and development that we are advocating should include both assessment and impact evaluation studies. And more investment on such studies is desirable to minimize reforms that are adopted and do not transform. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Paqueo, for sharing your research and views on how to improve our education system. As you said, there is an urgent need to improve our education system, make it more adaptive, flexible, or responsive, particularly our STEM education, in order to catch up with the demands of the fourth industrial revolution, which is more STEM skills intensive. And there is also a need to improve access to quality education and to intensify public investments on education. And this is especially important in bridging the gap between scientists and the public in general. There has to be that certain level of public scientific or mathematical competency, which ought to be addressed by our education system. Now, I see that there are some questions that are posted on our chat box, but as we said earlier, we will hold off airing these questions until all of our presenters have spoken. So thank you again, Dr. Vic Paqueo, and now we move on to Dr. Raul Pabella.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am reluctant to speak to the main issue of how to bring together journalists and scientists to this august body, since I have no new evidence-based insights to convey, unlike the two preceding speakers. I assume that I was invited here because I write occasional thought pieces for a newspaper. So I will just share some of my impressions. Those of you who are allergic to impressions, you can go off now. To start with, I am not a columnist in the strict sense of the word. As for example, Mahar or Boo are columnists. I understand a columnist to be a single person act. It's regular. You have a claim on the slot in your newspaper, and sometimes with some remuneration. Much less am I a journalist in the grand tradition of Berhel Santos or Maria Reza. I would be ashamed to claim to be a journalist in that tradition. Rather, I am a once a month op-ed contributor to Business World. That's a business newspaper. Coursed through a group column called Introspective, contributed to by 5 persons, and BW can deny me a slot if it is expedient at certain points in time. As a hawker of ideas, I largely avoided the COVID debate per se. Vaccines, testing, tracing, etc. Because I know very little about these things. And I will only communicate my own confusion and my own ignorance. Rather, I comment on familiar policy issues where scientific evidence is readily available and can be brought to bear. I only join the conversation tangentially on the issue of government stimulus response, especially CREATE, which is on the table of President Duterte at the moment. I commented on CREATE simply because its central thrust is corporate tax reduction, which evidence shows that is actually just pushing on a string, because private investors will not invest when the market is this dead. It is not therefore a stimulus towards investment. That is why, with the monies that are being made available to them, with the low interest, they are actually chasing government treasuries and Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas special deposits. I also opposed the replacement of the gross income tax with corporate income tax at 25%, the gross income tax at 5%, to corporate income tax at 25% for PESA locators, which I knew would be counterproductive because it effectively increased the taxes on direct foreign investors. Vietnam taxes direct foreign investors at 17%, and we are only moving to 25%, perhaps to 20% at some point. In any case, it is an increase in the taxes of direct foreign investors. Of course, I did not make any dent on the trajectory of CREATE. Philippine business liked CREATE because they like corporate income tax reduction. We cannot, of course, expect otherwise. There are some realities that I recognize as an op-ed writer. It's one thing to ventilate a science viewpoint on a policy. It is another to expect that the policymakers will even respond, not to say positively. So I take the viewpoint of Milton Friedman who once said, you put your alternative policy on the table and wait for the crisis to make your alternative compelling. When will that crisis come about? We don't know. Perhaps your ideas will become compelling after you have quit this earth. Policymakers are not objective collators of evidence. They are not objective collators of evidence. They respond favorably only to ideas that confirm their own preconceived priors, what we call confirmation bias. They resist or ignore those that are critical or unflattering. They can be forced to respond only if there is a cascade of opinion in favor of change, which is itself as rare as a black swan event. So I try to maintain the label or the veneer of objectivity by hewing closely the data, trying very hard to avoid the label partisan. If you are labeled Dilawan, the Pulahans in power will not give you any ear. If you're labeled Pulahan, the Dilawans will ignore your ideas. They will only pay attention to your label. And then I know that true win-win situations in reality are very rare. In fact, as rare as I mentioned black swans. Real change is always painful, always entails some social pain. Some sector will be deprived in order for the polity to attain a better place. There are usually quotient bargains out there, perhaps a lot. That is, some people who lose now can be compensated adequately by the created economic surplus of change in the future. But who will broker the deal? Is the broker credible? If it is the government, then perhaps the bargain will never see the light of day. Over the years, I have many advocacies and have suffered defeat in almost all of them. But let's keep on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fabella. Thank you for essentially pointing out that a responsible scientist who regularly communicates with the public, such as yourself, would know when to join or when to hold off joining the public conversation so as to avoid sowing public confusion. This is particularly important at this time when there is a proliferation of misinformation and disinformation. So objectivity is really a social responsibility that has to be exercised. And now we're down to the last, as we said, not the least, amongst our four speakers. We have Mr. Buchanko. Sir, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. I didn't prepare any formal presentation because I want to keep with the spirit of a fireside chat. Besides, I'm the only one here without a PhD, so maybe I will be representing mostly the working press, since that is where I started and that's where I am right now. There are a few things we have to remember about our media as we know it today, as it was before, and as it will be in the times to come. First of all, the quality of journalists we have in the country today leaves much to be desired. Outside of the two major papers, and maybe the business papers as well. So four. The other newspapers are really for really mass circulation, and the kind of evaluation that they do for deciding what goes there or not would be based on what on mass appeal, and the kind of salary scales you get in these publications will not attract the best and the brightest from the graduates of the different schools of mass communications or all that. The best paying mass communication companies are the broadcast networks, and they closed out one, the best paying one. So in that sense, you get what you pay for. So the quality of what you read is really designed for the least common denominator. The focus is essentially on politics and police stories because this is what people want. Politics entertain them. Police stories give them a sense of security. They want to know where the high crime areas are. They want to know how they can protect themselves. They want to know about the modus operandi of criminals, so they can do mitigating measures for to protect their families. So there's a reason for why uh, publications and even programs like TV Patrol, for instance, in the past, focus on police stories. But the other big problem is that academicians and scientists somehow do not know how to engage with media. There are many of us who would love to be able to talk to them and to engage with them and to learn more about what they're doing if they make themselves more accessible. The one who's made himself pretty much accessible is Dr. Mahar Lagmay, and has made himself very useful in the every time there's a storm, every time there's a weather disturbance or a volcanic eruption, because he is able to translate himself into language that the common man can understand. And one thing with Dr. Lagmay is that he also goes out of his way to talk to radio, to use radio as a means of propagating his ideas. And Mahar is able to. In fact, one point in time, we got him as a co-anchor in ABS-CBN in DCMM because he's able to explain exactly what is going on, so people can understand the importance of protecting the environment and doing what they can to conserve um, what we have left of our forests and other natural resources. And so Mahar is accessible, Mahar is understandable, and this is the kind of thing that would make science accessible to mass media. Then of course there is Dr. Mahar Mangahas, who is writing a column for the Philippine Daily Inquirer, and and Mahar is able to choose these topics of research very well, very timely, and uh, and I love getting all the press releases from SWS almost every other week. I commonly use them because they do explain what's going on out there that we cannot describe without the numbers reliably gathered by Dr. Manahas. The other one who's making an effort is PIDS. They issue press releases, and somehow they're able to digest the contents of their almost undigestible paper sometimes, so that it's kind of useful. And if a journalist is more than interested to be able to get more information, then they can go into the papers themselves. But it would be nice if there will be again making the authors of those papers more easily accessible to media. That there should always be a contact number or a contact email address there so that questions can be asked. getting into media, you should not just focus on the front page of the papers because you're not always going to get there. Unless you are like Mahar Lagmay, there's a storm. So Mahar gets there. The business section is also interesting, but you have a very restricted audience here. But sometimes the restricted audience in business these are the decision makers who can also help uh, promote the cause that you have in mind. The thing is, you have to make science interesting, uh, and this is not so difficult to do because in my own little way, I've always, for example, in agriculture, I've always gone out of my way to try to see what science has developed that would make us have better harvest, you know, and all that. I communicate with Dr. Javier in UP Los Baños about these things, and sometimes there are very interesting issues also in agriculture, like when I found out that Jollibee is supporting a group of farmers in Nueva Ecija to grow the potatoes and the onions and other stuff that they need in Jollibee, and that they're able to guarantee them the market so that the farmers don't have to go through middlemen. And not only that, they provide the farmers scientific inputs so that they can have better production and quality control. Now, the thing you also remember now is that everybody is now a publisher with social media, the internet. So there's so much news, there's so much fake news, and uh, and sometimes I pity the public because not everybody can discern what is fake, what is real. Those of us who cover the news, we know what's going on. We talk to each other, and we know the inside stories. We probably don't publish 50% of what we know because for so many reasons. Sometimes also out of fear that Mahar also pointed out earlier that it's become more dangerous to be to talk to write in media these days, and so you have to worry about social media, and there's so much also conspiracy theories, and there's where science can come in. I find this interesting because with COVID, sometimes I get a lot of crazy, really stupid conspiracy theories being pasted on my wall, and I take them all down. But many other people are not that well versed. You know, there are also controversies now. Ivermectin, for example, the use of this drug, an old drug, an antiparasitic drug, to cure COVID. It is not acceptable by the medical profession because of lack of research on its use, on the proper dosage and everything. So, but people are really going to town with this, and if you don't know how to analyze studies that are published in peer reviews, you don't have basics of research knowledge, then you'll really be waylaid. Um, on education, the test scores have been in the headlines lately, and even Joey Salceda has talked a lot about this one. And this is something which I think we could focus more. And that's where we need focus. I appreciate the very extensive presentation on education today, but sometimes we can get overwhelmed. And we need, as journalists, we only have so much space, so much time. We need to be able to focus. The test score is a good item where we can focus. We can focus to see where we're going wrong, what we're doing wrong, and how we can improve in more easily digestible terms. We can skip sometimes all of the different numbers and the statistical test because that will just crowd out the main message. Sometimes when you write for a mass publication, you just focus on the main message and the least amount of confusing numbers, and would be much better results. Um, there are also other things that perhaps should be covered by the academe, which we have not been able to get much data on. For example, on the justice system, it would be very interesting to find out how many people in the city jails are really serving beyond beyond the limits of their terms if they were convicted for the crimes they're accused of. Um, we want to know what is the socioeconomic status of people who get charged, what happens to them. Something more data driven on the justice system. I haven't really seen. Maybe I'm wrong. I just haven't seen it. But we need more data driven studies on what's wrong with their justice system, because obviously there's so much wrong there, and there's so much human suffering involved that will have to be relieved. Then it will be interesting also to make a study of the members of Congress through the years. How many of them really represent the people they claim to represent? How divide them to socioeconomic classes, divide them into educational levels. Is our representative democracy truly representative? I haven't seen a study on that one. Again, I don't know. Maybe I'm not reading enough of your materials, but that should be interesting reading, especially now that we're about to go to another election. So people would know that voting for the most popular may mean that they're forfeiting their right to be represented properly. So as I mentioned earlier, we like big studies, but you have to do them in bite sizes. We have a 30-second maximum time limit for a TV news story. We have 280 character limit for Twitter. And even in my own column, I have a limit of 1,000 words per column, which I violate almost every day, every time I write. And I've gotten a lot of warnings already from my editors to keep it down to 1,000 words. So when you deal with the mass media, the academics will have to get out of their own world and try to view it from the perspective of people who are not so attuned to the academic ways, to the academic interest, and make it, if you want your research to be useful for policy purposes, because you can do your research. It's not research for research's sake. I would like to believe you want your research to be a good input for policy determination, and it will never get to that level unless you are able to communicate exactly what's your point. Uh, you can have a 1 hour presentation on a nice topic, but at the end of the day, people will ask, so what do we do? What's your recommendation? And that's also how journalists write their stories. We put the last, what you consider last, the conclusion, on top. We do the inverted pyramid, so to speak, because the story that must be told must be in the first paragraph. If you cannot tell your story, that is the story, if you cannot summarize your research in one paragraph, that can, from which the headline can be taken, then you're not writing for mass media. You're not writing for lay people, and you're writing for yourselves. You're writing for your fellow academics with PhDs, and that's no good if that is the case. So anyway, interesting to listen to all of you, and I don't have much more to say beyond what I have, the impressions I've given now, and I will just listen to the questions, and maybe if you have some other questions that I could answer, I'll do my best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanko. Thank you for sharing your viewpoint as a journalist. Indeed, To effectively bridge the gap between scientists and journalists, there is a need for academics and scientists to know how to engage the media and make their research more accessible to journalists such as yourself. Now, that's on the one hand. And on the other hand, you also pointed out that effective communication of the scientific, technological concepts to the general public presupposes a certain level of knowledge, scientific knowledge, for the general public to be conversant or to appreciate these, also to be more discerning. Right? And so this brings us back to the importance of leveling up our education system, especially our STEM education system. So now we open the floor to your questions. We have a couple of questions on the chat box. I'll read them first. And then should you have questions that you'd like to air orally, we'll have them next. Okay, so this is first from Dr. CP David. This is addressed to Dr. Paqueo. This is regarding higher competition or better attitude in private schools. Could it be the effect of students or families in private schools being more invested or having paid tuition in terms of trying to do well in school, as opposed to those in public schools where tuition is free? If so, the same can be said about public state universities versus private state universities. Dr. Paqueo, your answer?
Um, yes, I think it has actually that's an assumption, a working hypothesis that underlies uh, our research, and even in terms of advocacy for the reform of the higher education system. Uh, that that about parents being invested and therefore students also being invested and serious about their studies. That's on the consumer side. It's very important, I think. But at the same time, uh, in case of the private schools or higher education institutions, shall we say, on the supply side, they should also be invested. But if you are in the SUCs, it's that particular motivation is less powerful because unlike the private sector, uh, you are protected. There's government to bail out or to support you, whatever your performance is. I mean, for the SUCs, while in higher education institutions and schools, uh, you don't deliver, you don't make money, you're gone. So that must count as a factor, no? Or as factors for why you observe this differential.
And and also, may I just add an observation now that we're doing online schooling. My observation is like, well, here now students who, well, our economic students tend to come from more privileged backgrounds, and I think that this online schooling, distance learning system is more of an advantage to them, given that no, they live in well, better, they have better houses, they have places where they can study, they have all the technological gadgets, and also it has to do with that overall environment of having that advantage.
Yes, right. But that could be uh, that I guess that should not prevent either public schools or private schools to be able to access technology enhanced teaching practices. You know, they can do it in school or in other homes.
So I think this is again to Dr. Pajero. This is from Dr. Vic Ilag, have you considered including health or nutritional status of the students? There are studies showing prenatal and early childhood nutrition as significant contributors to a child's IQ and behavior.
I would have loved to include them, particularly because that's a huge problem, stunting, which of course which have consequences for the children's brain development and capacity uh, um, to study and do good analytical work later in life. So, but unfortunately, those were not measured uh, in the PISA data that we were analyzing. But there are lots of in the literature that they do impact the learning achievement, cognitive as well as non-cognitive competencies. Now, the the probably in other data sets, one can look at that. But it's I think that's pretty well established um, uh, linkage. I think the big challenge, and this has been another one of those like in education, lots of actions, lots of um, reforms to improve nutrition. But nakakainis when I came back. So I work on nutrition and health issues like 50 years ago or a little less than that. And then when I came back, the problem was really as bad as it was. So the question is, how do you raise the nutrition status, particularly prevent stunting? It's a huge problem still.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pajeda. There's another question for you, but I'll skip this for later. We'll go back to the question by Dr. Mendoza, Aurora Mendoza. We have a question for, here, we have a question for Mr. Bu Chanko. This is from Dr. Fabian Dairit. How can we use social media more effectively?
Well, simple. You have to engage. You have to get yourself your hands your hands involved. You have to fit dirty, and I don't see too many academicians doing that. The only one I know right now is let me see, Dr. Jose Ramon Albert of PIDS, the former chief statistician. He's the only one who's really very active in Facebook, and he really argues and. He argues on gives us a good background of somebody makes a comment on statistics, and he has a view of it, and so explains it, so that enlightens everybody. But I don't see too many academicians doing that sort of thing. Maybe you don't have to go to it to Facebook right away. Maybe you do it step by step. Maybe you can do it through Viber groups to begin with. And Mahar Mangahasa and I are in the FEF, the Foundation for Economic Freedom Viber group. And sometimes the discussions there could be very, very interesting. And from there it spreads too, because that's how you learn. That's how you learn from everybody. Now, just talking like engagement. And a good example of engagement now, I don't know if you would like it, if it's good or bad, but Teddy Boy Locsin, for example, the only time I've heard of a foreign secretary who engages on Twitter and really calls a spade, and with all the matching cast words. But again, it makes the Department of Foreign Affairs, which is really so up there, accessible to ordinary people. And you can see the comments of OFWs who are being helped, how they appreciate what he's doing. So those are things that are important. So the only way to be effective in social media is to engage. And you can ask Boots Albert about how he's doing it, because it's the one who's doing it quite well these days.
Okay, Thank you, Mr. Luchanko. Okay, well, this is for Dr. Pacheco again. This is from Dr. Mendoza, Al Mendoza. She would like to know the measures used for academic performance for math, reading, etc. between public and private high schools. Can you elaborate on these?
Can you kindly repeat? Sorry.
She would like to know the measures used for academic performance for math, reading, etc. She wants an elaboration of the measures used for academic performance.
Yeah, that's a kind of standardized protocol that is a set of questions. And PISA is the quality of that is recognized. It's very well. So, but I'm not an expert in sort of test constructions. But that that survey and the construction of the test were really done systematically with top professionals and experts in the field.
Thank you, Dr. Pacheco. This is for Dr. Mangahas, sir. The statement, so to speak, that set this ball rolling was that, the finding, SWS finding that Filipinos in general don't appreciate science. What were the reasons given for this? And how do you think we can, transcend this kind of mentality? So you're muted. Thank you.
I think we just have to expand public knowledge. We just have to teach some more about what science is in practical terms. There has to be a bigger volume of information spread. I'm not a communicator, mind you, but I'm feeling now that everything is all about infection. It's like once they get some indicators, everything has to be there already. But I think we need variety. You know what I don't see news about the tracing, about where did the infection come from? What kind of contact was it, and how did they go after the source? Because isn't that the way whereby you check the disease, you look for the one who spread it to you, and then you go after them, and then you make sure that they're quarantined, right? Find them like that. Or were they able to do that? I have a feeling that the tracing is not happening, and that's the most important thing to do. And they have apps in other countries that get that, but here, you just put your phone number if you go to Starbucks. That's all that I know. If somebody gets infected in a Starbucks, are you going to call everybody who was there, including me, who want to buy something? We don't have stories to find out where the spreadings came out, and yet the instruments seem to be, let's close everything down. We don't know where it came from. We close everything na lang. That way we can be sure that it won't spread. That's the most unscientific kind of policy that I see.
Back to curfew.
For example, is there spreading of COVID at night? Until we find that, why should we close nighttime? I think that curfews are the most unscientifically determined measure. curfews, because curfews prevent people from working at night. They prevent people from spreading out at night where they have more space. You know, if you have people half working at night, half working the day, hindi masyado masikip. Di ba? How about having school at night? Of course, you spend more on ilaw and stuff like that, but you don't have to crowd the students so much because you will make the classes sizes smaller by having more shifts, day shift, night shift, afternoon shift. Then you could open the classrooms. No, but they want everything closed, absolutely closed.
There,
That's my
as you
answer.
said, there has to be that the trade-off, well balanced trade-off between lives and livelihood. And by closing off everything, we're totally
They're not
cut
even
off
saving
livelihood.
lives, I think, because they haven't found the connection between the nighttime and the COVID.
Police and military, that's the only thing the way they think.
Well, that's why you see, I'm beginning to wonder what is it they really want. Do they really want to strengthen the military? Are they preparing for curfew and martial law? What
There's
is
a
what they want?
There's a
See?
comment from Dr. Mendoza in the chat. The curfew is a way to limit exposure, which is more convenient at night. It's not the
No.
virus, the night shift, but people in general don't want to be on night shift, except maybe journalists.
No, we don't want either. No, and
Mr. Yes.
anyway, I just wanted to make a point. I just before we go further, when you're writing also for journalists, the way we write for the general public, is that you write at the grade 6 level. We test the material that we write, and we try to see if a grade 6 student can understand it. If not, then we have problems. I don't know. I don't know now. The grade 6 understanding now might be even less than what it was when I was in journalism school. So that is a problem. Now, the other thing is that there was this question here also. I shall take it up already.
Okay, yes,
That
please.
I said we only publish 50% of what we know.
Yes, this is from
Uh,
Rainer Koa, Mr. Koa.
yeah. Actually, what I wanted, I just gave a figure there, but just to show that we cannot publish everything that we know, because there are a lot of rules, a lot of laws that we also have to be acquainted with. As a journalist, we get materials from all sorts of people. Some of them verified, some unverified. Some are verified, but could put you in a lot of trouble. So sometimes you also consider all of those things, and sometimes your editor will say, no, you can't do that. So there are many things but among ourselves, we know what the real story is. I only mentioned that to say that when we look at the news, we know right away what is fake news, what is not, and we look at the byline, and we also know how much discount we can give to the person writing, because we know who everybody is, and we know where they're coming from. We know who their patrons are and biases and all that. This is a very imperfect world, and so we just have to learn how to live with it as best as we can.
Thank you, Sir Luchanko. We have Dr. Pernia here. Yes, Dr. Pernia, you'd like to air a question? Sir, you're on mute.
Mentioned that there is low appreciation of science and technology among people, and I think that is right. And precisely, if we can bridge scientists with journalists and media in general, then that's the way to publicize the importance of science and technology. I've been trying to get some of these talk show hosts interested in hosting our top PAASE scientists and engineers, like Joel Coelho, who is an expert on vertical farming vertical farming or urban gardens and vertical farming, which can really address our problem with vegetables,
That's interesting.
of vegetables. And the other scientist that I wanted to get hosted by our talk show host is uh, this thing about 3D printing and additive manufacturing. But I've talked to Karen Davila, I've talked to Tony Velasquez, I've talked to Jessica Soho, and also Pinky Webb of CNN Philippines, and also Pia Ontiveros. But they said, okay, they answer. They say that they're interested in hosting those people, but then it never really pans out. It doesn't prosper. So I've been doing this for the past, I'd say, past 3 months, and I've been, I've just given up about, getting this talk show host to host these scientists and engineers. Uh, the one who is an expert on 3D printing and additive manufacturing is Rigoberto Advincula. Both of these guys are in the U.S., but they can do a Zoom. Uh, you know, uh, they can do Zoom presentation, and I thought these two, you know, urban farming, vertical farming, and 3D printing, additive manufacturing. These are really going to be of interest to not urban farming to people because of the need for vegetables, which can be grown aplenty and harvested aplenty also, and also 3D manufacturing, additive 3D printing, additive manufacturing going to be of interest to businessmen because I understand it's still not being used in, it's not being adapted in other ASEAN countries, additive manufacturing. So we could be the first if we can get people interested in these kinds of scientific scientific innovations. And the other thing is that our problem also is that our leaders, our political leaders, are they don't have the kind of keen interest in science and technology. Look at the our spending on science and technology or science research and development. It has been stuck at 0.15% of GDP for a long time, for the past 2 decades. Uh, Vietnam is at 0.35%. Even Indonesia is higher, also about 0.25%. Thailand is at 1%. Malaysia is at over 1%, which is the norm for the UNESCO norm for spending on science and technology. So we need leadership that will be, appreciative, that will understand the importance of science and technology, research and development. And I thought that by getting our talk show hosts to present these scientists and engineers in public on TV, then there can be more people can see what's really important and what's useful for the country, and especially if we can also get them uh, to be invited by by Malacanang, for example. But that is not uh, that is not in the cards with this with the present political leadership. So that is just I wanted to chip in as a contribution to this forum.
Yeah.
You know, yes.
Uh, Actually, you are competing with a lot of top headline stories with those people, and those people are fighting for ratings. So it's a question of how to present this thing to help them achieve the ratings that they're also trying to get. Sometimes at this stage, we probably have to be modest in our ambitions about getting science and technology forefront as far as media is concerned. Um, Start with the science pages, start with the business pages, with the business stories, and then it goes up. You mentioned vertical farming. I wrote about that one because I thought that was very interesting. And I did more than that. I talked to Tessie Coson and told her that maybe SM can convert the rooftops of their mall into some kind of urban garden, because right now some have solar, some have not. It's just cement. So maybe that can be converted. It's just still look into it. And there are a lot of and this lot of land banking going on in Metro Manila right now, and those lands are from SM to SMDC to Villar. They're all vacant right now. So I mentioned to Tessie that maybe she can take a look at this land that they're not about to use and start converting them into urban farms, because you're right, Ernie. We need to have vegetables within Metro Manila, so that we're not caught up when there's a big storm or typhoon cuts off the roads or something like that. One other last point is that we have to educate the journalists as well, and this is where I really credit ABS-CBN, especially when they put up this ABS-CBN University. The whole idea for the ABS-CBN University is for us to be able to train our people in the different crafts necessary in content making. And Gabi was very, very strongly in favor of investing heavily on this thing. And I was dean of the School of Journalism of ABS-CBN University. And one of the first things we did was we introduced a course called Data Journalism. And the whole idea is to make our journalists be able to understand how to read uh, tables, how to read the research, how to make analysis, how to make the right conclusions based on numbers that they see, so that Mahar won't be complaining every time also when they use the wrong words. So, but more than that, we want them to be able to know how to research, so that the problem in this country is that we don't have too much open source data, unlike in the US, where you can really use data journalism to gather your own research. But here, at least there are some that are available from PCSO, for example, the Statistics Commission, and that one should be helpful. And our journalists are very happy that we have trained them in this thing, and that they're getting different levels now. I think at level 2 or level 3 already in data journalism when they decided to close us down. And that's really a tragedy, because we're the only media organization trying to make something out of our news gatherers, and we're the ones who got closed down. So it's really a tragedy in that sense. But because the owners were willing to invest, because and actually we were even at one point talking to UP, College of Mass Communication, and LaSalle, to credit some of the courses with each our journalists towards the master's degree, so that they feel that there is something to it, because they have to devote their off hours to studying. We want them to be able to feel that it's worth it, no? The investment is worth it. They work after hours. They work on Saturdays and Sundays to attend these classes, and we want to make something out of it. But well, the plans are there. When better times come, we can pick up from where we left off, I guess.
But what you're saying is that we have to start from square one. The
Yeah.
other countries in ASEAN are already fast advanced in terms of science and technology, spending on science and technology, as well as appreciation by their publics. So it's a very what you're saying is it's going to take another 3 decades maybe before we can get to their level.
Probably more.
That's the problem.
Probably more.
Why can't we expedite this kind of thing? Because we are
because
intelligent people naman eh.
society only appreciates lawyers in this country.
Ano, no?
Society only appreciates lawyers in this country.
Well,
They
that's
don't appreciate scientists. They don't appreciate even doctors. They only appreciate lawyers because they become politicians.
they don't appreciate the health workers, right?
Right,
Healthcare
right.
workers.
So that is our problem, and I don't know if it's a colonial vestige.
No,
That's
it
right.
has to take good leadership also. So, leadership who has foresight, who is who is schooled naman, the basics of science and technology that they understand.
Yeah.
Para naman
Well,
otherwise wala mangyari.
Maybe
well,
po this crisis can present
Gloria,
us an opportunity. Sorry, go ahead.
So,
Gloria Arroyo could have done this because she was I thought was
I was going to say that. I was going to say that you
never happened.
never happened. Yeah, she had 10 years, huh?
Yeah, 10 years.
Giselle, yes, please.
Anyway, thank you.
you might know that, or may not know that Gloria supported SNT with the investment in the National Science Complex in UP Diliman, where PAASE led the campaign. But anyway, at this point, I would like to thank all our speakers. We're not ending yet, please. No, I just want to point out that our thrust in PAASE would be to oppose or to fight our threats and our risks now, side by side with to move forward on the positives, on productivity, health, and economy. Diba? P. Ernie. Anyway, so Boo, I would like to use the idea of Nanas Raul, which is that we must find ourselves in pain and suffering to be able to do something. Kasi mukhang hindi tayo talagang masyado pang nagsasuffer enough for us to move forward together. So at this point, I would like to point out again the immediate threats besetting us during COVID, how we are to stop this COVID infection in easy ways. And I would like this opportunity for some of our leading PASA members, in particular Vic Ilag, to tell us what his thoughts are about not getting enough mileage in terms of the simple doable things that we are considering among ourselves. So this is like individual opinions, okay? Pero based on data. And it's a good segue, Boo, because you said you want to focus on data. Afterwards, we will ask our NAS Vice President and former PASA President, Toby Dairit, also to speak. So may I give the floor to Vic Ilag now? Thank you.
Okay, so Giselle, yeah. So this is with regards to the situation in the Philippines. I know, so I'm based in Australia, Melbourne, so we have 0 cases so far, knock on wood, for the past 22 days. But one of the issues I think with COVID is the transmission is going rapidly, and the mitigating factors right now is mainly social distancing, masks, and quarantine. I think from a scientific point of view, that's fine, but actually it doesn't stop the virus from replicating. And when the virus keeps on multiplying, actually it generates more variants. So the idea now is to essentially double masks. So even if you put 2 masks, the virus still replicating even if you isolate the person. So one of the things we've been proposing, and probably you could give us advice how to promote this, was that way back when early on was that there's actually simple ways of reducing the virus in an infected person. And the logic of reducing the virus from an infected person is that person could not infect anymore. Because if you let an infected person, isolate in the house, that person will still produce lots of viruses. As a matter of fact, you could calculate probably 1 billion viral particles within 2 days just from one virus entering that person. So one simple method actually, and it's been proven, is to use betadine. So what it does, it inactivates the virus in the throat and even in the nose. And there was a clinical study published, I think, last December in Bangladesh that people treated, they took about 303 subjects, that within 3 days, 89% were already COVID negative. So instead, and I think this is where the problem of the Philippines as well. So even if you isolate and quarantine, the person who's infected still produces lots of viruses. So the idea is we could reduce the viral load by inactivating the virus early on. It prevents it from spreading within the person and actually infecting. So we tried to, we even had the primer on this, and you could help us. We tried to push this, but this hasn't really gotten traction. So one of the things we're doing right now, grassroots a bit, is we started a couple of weeks ago. We're in contact with Los Baños. Looks like there's a traction there, and we're trying to promote it. But I think it hasn't really, even within the medical community, I think we're really having difficulties. So, and if I may add, sorry, one drawback of not stopping the virus from replicating is that you accumulate mutations. So it's not surprising that we have Philippine variants. And for all you know, we even have more additional variants. So if I may add a couple of more minutes. So a simple analogy is if we have a dengue outbreak, what do? We actually spray to kill the mosquitoes because the vector or the one which the transmits is the mosquito. You get it from mosquito bites an infected person and transfers it. If we apply the logic we're applying now with COVID, what you'll see is everybody is nakakulambo habang lumalabas. And at that same time, you're not actually controlling the replication of the virus. You're not preventing it from replicating. So I think it's not surprising that we're not having taking an offensive approach. It's mostly defensive. And I think there's no way we're going to stop this from spreading. Yes, so Giselle, you want to?
Yeah, so that's just one example of how we could contribute the scientists to stemming the spread of the virus. Okay, transmission based on reducing the viral load. Now, I'd like to call Toby Diary. Everyone knows Toby for many good reasons, including virgin coconut oil. But Toby, are you around? I know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Sel. Yeah. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe I'd like to pick up from where Vic Ilag left off. And I think the basic problem we're facing here, and maybe this is verging on the political, solutions which don't cost anything, don't get any support from this from our DOH, basically. I see the logic behind using an antiseptic, and it's quite logical and low cost. There's people have been proposing low concentration of hydrogen peroxide because then it's same principle. You oxidize, and that's the same principle behind VCO. It's a low cost. The theories are there. It's a surfactant effect, although you need quite a bit of it if you have a high load. But the in vitro studies were favorable. So far the single clinical study which has been done, and this is the first time it's been done, double-blind, placebo-controlled. Although the number of subjects were small, it was successful. But then, as I always say, you need many games to win before you win a championship. Unfortunately, DOST doesn't really have that much money to support more clinical studies, and DOH wants something like thousands of patients, and they're not going to support it. They're just basically listening for advice from the FDA in the US. So I think our problem is even our own authorities will not support science which has promise. The theory is good, the cost is low, and of course this then becomes political. Why aren't they even investing any attention on this? Which also brings us to the other political thing about ivermectin. There's probably as much evidence which supports it as those who will say it's not good enough. No one has said that ivermectin is harmful. They're saying that there's not enough evidence that it's good, but no one is saying that it's harmful, and there are people who say that it works. Anyway, maybe this will also address what Buchanko mentioned about getting your message across in the first paragraph as a scientist, and then talking about an issue like VCO or ivermectin. Very difficult to summarize that in the first paragraph. So I think we have to develop a way of science communication that doesn't have to end with the first paragraph, Hopefully, maybe this is a skill we'll have to learn, but it certainly takes time to develop it. So maybe that's just the few things I'd like to share. That with respect to the this COVID problem, there are low cost solutions, but we're not taking a look at it, and that's where the politics comes in. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Toby. And I know Vic has a lot to say about ivermectin. Would you like to say a few more things about ivermectin, or should I? It's about data.
I defer to you. I defer to you, Giselle. Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think since Boo mentioned data, the issue here actually is the kind of data or the number, say, of patients in the clinical trials that are included, say, in ivermectin versus the effect size. So the sample size and effect size of ivermectin studies versus, say, the vaccine studies. But then you have to look at what's the quality of the trial in the published literature. Then, of course, the ones for the vaccines are huge, tens of thousands of subjects included, right? Because they are run by the pharma companies that produce the vaccines. And so I think the dilemma here in our country is that our doctors, who are the ones who decide these things, will always compare the quality of the RCT in ivermectin, reported about 71 of them, and say that they do not pass the quality of the RCTs that we would require for the vaccines. And so here you have ivermectin that is really receives a warning from the FDA and from the IH stat. So I think these are issues that are very relevant to society because, as Toby said, ivermectin is generally considered safe, and it's been around for a very long time. And then there are scientific in vitro studies that say that it works against the viruses, and we know that it's low cost. And then now, how do we make it available to the Filipino population in the human formulation? And in fact, it will not even receive like first level support from the government. So there's some people who are suggesting that we should try to get this on a clinical trial, a well-designed one locally, and we could find our pharma partners to provide the ivermectin supply for the studies. But at the very least, try to see for ourselves if this in fact has some effect or not, because in the meantime we have no vaccines and we don't know when the vaccines are coming. So these are the things that trouble the scientists all the time. We are all in PAASE. We have this ongoing debates, conversations between MDs and between MDs and scientists. Okay, but then even if you say that media does not also listen to MDs, I think the media listens more to the MDs than to the scientists, like Toby and Vic. So I think we could hear from our speakers, and I think we had a great afternoon, and everything is covered, from the most important on STEM education and education in general, to getting the feedback from the people, what the real data is, what the sentiments are of the people through the surveys. And then we need this overarching thing from Raul, who tells us that bottom line is, I guess we need to experience pain and suffering to act, to move, and then finally we really get this great insights from Boo on how we can bridge journalists and scientists. So any last words from our guest speakers before we close? I think Sarah has a class.
Well, I just typed it. One last thing is that remember that people have short attention spans these days, and that you should remember that when you're crafting communication to mass audiences. That's even harder than the one paragraph summary at the top. But that's something you have to remember, because even our politicians, our leaders, have very short attention spans. They don't listen to you about ivermectin or anything else because they're stuck in their own problems right now, and they cannot think of those things. you have to craft your message in such a way that you will get their attention. You almost need an advertising copywriter to be able to get people's attention these days. That's the thing. That's how to sum up everything I've said.
Reality.
JSL, can I?
Yes, Vic. Yes, please.
Yes, I was fascinated with the conversation about, sort of how to communicate with the uh, larger population, etc. And 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 I appreciated the difficulty. I think that this, I'm not a marketing person, but I know that if you have a large kind of captured market, you prioritize it. So the big captured market are the school children. So why don't we maybe do something that's will interest the children to well, first develop their curiosity, and then through stories about discoveries. I used to during my time like read kind of books which is about Louis Pasteur, how he discovered uh, uh, his various discoveries, etc. And that really kind of even until now kind of stuck with me. The interest in science, even though um, I don't have the capability to be a real scientist, but uh, I think that that's what you need to do as Dr. Fabella Raul was saying. He was expressing um, uh, I don't know if it was skepticism or just doubts about maybe we are too late. That actually we need to develop this curiosity, this some appreciation of simple science, even observation, etc. Do it early on, and you have a big market there, and that you can kind of market, if you will, the idea of science, its usefulness, its thrill and excitement of discovery, etc.
Thank you, Vic. We're wanting you with you in that on that one, and I hope you can help us in PASA. Our this is our top banner. Our priority is really STEM education, and we are actually now calling for proposals to develop STEM materials like you described. Okay, and we are also going to set up what we call our STEM B. We're going to revive this national competitions in math and science, and that this is really part of the advocacy of CP David and Father Ben Nebres. We will create communities of teachers and students in math and science, and we will prepare them to participate in the STEM B nationally. I don't know, CP, if you want to say something. Are you there? CP David? Well, he might not be here anymore, but then at this point, I think I would like to ask Mahar and Raul to say a few words, parting words. Thank you so much, Vic. Any more words from NS Raul?
Ako.
Yes,
I
yes.
think I think people believe you more if you're doing something and you do it yourself. All right, even if it's small. For example, I have read enough about ivermectin that it doesn't harm, and you better have some on hand because it's going to help you if you have the first sign of this thing. So I'm going to look for it among those who say that they're trying to get some and try to have it on hand. And of course, I will consult my own doctor right away to see what if he thinks that it's going to help. But it's not going to hurt. That's what everybody says. It's not going to hurt. Parang sayang. And if enough people, do it so that it becomes a fad, then you will have the evidence that it works. Huh? That it works. It's not what you say, it's what you do. You see? It's like kung maging uso ang sang ano, ang isang ginagawa. At maraming nagbe-benefit diyan. And it's going to spread. So instead of just talking and talking, do.
Do. And then,
Do. Get it. And then let it be known na, oy, binibili ko yan. Sinubukan ko yun, etc. And then you'll have your personal, personal, what do you call that? Yung testimonial. Tingnan natin. Tapos dumami yung mga testimonial and then people will start doing it.
ganun naman nga. So, hindi naman binabawal ng FDA kasi kung meron namang human preparation tapos
Yeah.
by the doctor, then it's your free choice. True? So, lactic, sabi ng iba, every 3 weeks. So, paano maging toxic yon? Tapos, kung merong signs or nag-positive sa test, then would you take it at a higher dose, right? So anyway, yung mga ganun, it's really your individual choice. Something that you might be able to pick up in your survey after some time.
Well,
right?
we will see. We will see.
The problema is the supply is now dwindling because the persons who are preparing this have stopped producing it to follow the FDA. Yes, it's now been announced. No, it's no longer available from the source.
Siguro marami nang kumuha.
No, the NBI raided the warehouse.
Ayun.
Sabi,
so they're trying to hoard it for themselves.
No, raid was again, sabi fake news daw. Pero ngayon ang gagaling na from the source that they have stopped compounding it.
Why?
Because of the FDA directive. So hindi na siya. No, where are you going to draw the line?
If it's not harmful, why do they do that? See, that's when I begin to suspect may business yun.
I don't know.
I'm very suspicious, Something doesn't hurt.
Well, that's the point. That's the point, Mahari, because they don't know if it doesn't hurt.
Yes.
No, that's not everybody. I've not seen, I've not seen that. So
yeah, I mean, they want. I mean, these are doctors. They also have their own standards for statistical.
Yeah, but there are also doctors who say hindi masama, it will help in some cases. If it helps in a few cases, okay na yun, as long as it doesn't harm.
Yung it doesn't harm thing is what's bothering them, I think, at this point in time.
Take it from me, I don't trust those things. May ano yan, may racket din yun.
Well, you're going to cut this part of the.
Sorry.
I have to go also.
Yes. No, I'm saying we are going to clean out this video because this is public. Okay, this is
okay.
going to be posted in our website. So we
you can
and then towards the end, just know, Mahar, that one of our NAST MDs just spoke publicly against it in a town hall meeting in a video. Okay, so but what I pointed out earlier is the standards for clinical trials for the big pharma versus the small ones that are will not earn a lot of money because they're cheap drugs. So paano ka makaka-generate ng ganong klaseng numbers for your clinical trials? So you'll never make it to the cut, right? So those are the things that we have to learn to understand among scientists and lay persons. Anyway, so this has really been a very, very for me a very insightful meeting. So many things learned from you, from our guest speakers. I hope so many things learned from you, from our guest speakers. I hope also you learned a bit from the comments of our participants, including our scientists and academics. One of them is our former OA Director, Office of Admissions Director, Pichi Mendoza, who's here with us. Okay, so there are others who had questions and they were not asked anymore because of the limited time and very dynamic interactions among us. So I'd like to thank you very much, Mahar, Vic, Raul, and Abu for this wonderful afternoon. And we just have to forge ahead. And I always say you have to fight the threats, but you also have to move forward on education and on food and agriculture. Okay? Mas long term 'yon. Pero hindi tayo hindi tayo magi-give up. So at this point, boo, you might know that tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, andito na naman tayo sa isa pang chat. Okay? This time it is on Emil Javier's, NS Emil Javier's honoris causa speech, lifting the bottom half, his institutional contrition, UP and UP Los Baños. So we're going to have a reprise of it. And with us, our guest will be Ben Pexon, Leo Sebastian of DA, and Dong Rasco of NAST. And my co-chat host would be Ino Lansigan, who's here with us today. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, we just keep the conversations going, get to know one another better. Okay, better and better this way. Thank you
You're welcome, Giselle.
so much, everyone. Thanks, P. Ernie, so much for joining us. All right, it's been a long afternoon, so it's time to rest a bit. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Sarah, for getting through this chat with many diverse ideas, opinions, etc. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Ben Pexon is here still. Thanks, Toby. Thanks, Toby. Thanks, Ben. Tomorrow. Problema, Ben. Walang problema.
Mama Giselle.
Yes. Ano sabi mo?
Salamat.
Hello, Giselle.
Yes, Ben. Oh, alam
Yeah.
ko.
May
Yes.
problema ako talaga sa video, yung speaker ko sa computer. But on my iPhone, I can pick up once in a while, kaya lang napuputol. But that's a very excellent work. Anyway.
Naku, ikaw magaling. Maniwala ka, ikaw magaling dito. I've never seen anybody moderate something as good as you. So
Anyway, tomorrow I'll call Emil now. And because it's his talk anyway. Kasi Emil very thorough naman. He already agreed to speak?
Of course. Siyempre.
Okay, so you can have him talk for a long time, and I listened to his talk dun sa UPLB, yung honoris causa niya. He talked for 70 minutes. So you can get him talking without us and without me.
No. People want to hear you. They want to see the dynamic interchange between the two of you. Please, no. So
I'll try, pero masama yung aking connection kasi nasa bundok ako eh. I'm very poor.
Ben, you're
not kasi bakasyonan mo, Ben.
Huwag ka
yung bahay ko, alam ni Toby, ano to eh.
Ang ganda ng bakasyonan mo, Ben.
Ang ganda ng bakasyon. So, Ben, huwag ka mag-turn on ng video mo. Huwag. Ganyan lang, kamukha ngayon.
Lagyan mo ng retrato, Ben, para makita naman yung kagawpuhan mo.
Baka naman sakali, lumabas pa
anyway, that was a very good discussion today, yung ivermectin, saka yung sayo, yung virgin coconut oil. Toby, habulin mo yan. There is money now for research. The OST. At least 500,000 a year.
Kapag-usapan ng PCA, actually we have to do dapat holistic eh. VCO is just one product. Actually maraming products and I'm trying to prepare something. Baka ang mag-orchestrate yan PCA eh.
Yeah,
may naka-assign sa R&D.
We have a good man there. We have the General Madrigal is good. Anyway, with BCO and ivermectin, because itong vaccines, iniipit nila tayo eh.
Ay nako, Toby, baka naman ikaw pwede mong ma-convince si Jimmy Montoya na mag-clinical trial na maayos for ivermectin, yung sinabi natin, no?
Actually, walang pera ang DOST. Naubos na.
Okay.
But on the yung Coco Levy fund, $500 million, Toby, for the first 2 years. After that, it will be 750 million the next 2 years. And then beyond that, it's going to be even more than $1 billion on the 5th year.
So Ben, ang isang rin na pwede dito, si Gobet Advincula nga, the one who will make use of nano-crystalline cellulose from copra, from coconut, to do with 3D printing and additive manufacturing. Every part.
Alam mo, maganda yan. This is about 4 or 5 years ago, tinanong ko yung gumagawa ng charcoal. Sabi ko, kumusta yung charcoal niya? Sabi niya, lahat ng charcoal nila, in-import ng China. Ngayon, sinearch ko yung literature on nanotechnology. Lahat ng lumabas na research on carbon galing sa China. Ginagamit na yung charcoal natin for nanotechnology.
Oh, imagine. Oh. Yon. So anyway, now na nandiyan kayo ni NS Emil, advising Madrigal, so General Madrigal, siguro naman makakapasok itong ganitong mga innovative products.
Yes, I can mention that because I can get input directly to Leo Sebastian. Let's fund this sort of thing.
To be honest, nagpipinta kami ng proposal. Ano ba?
Yeah, let's try to get proposals now. They have money in the Coco-Levy Fund. It's already earmarked for research in 500 million.
Si Admin Madrigal, kilala mo personally.
Yeah. Huh? Hello.
You know him personally?
Hello.
Yeah, Ben.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, we'll do what we can, okay?
Okay, tomorrow na. Toby, be around.
Sige.
Okay. Bye-bye. Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Si Kashana, Veracruz from Erie, thanks for joining. Huh?
And thank you, Giselle. Good show. Yeah.
Sige, see you tomorrow.
Okay. Bye.
Very good. Very collegiate. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Ikaw, Toby.